All right. Uh, Hi there. This is a interview about community and alienation. I think to start this off, uh, what uh, what name would you be like sort of okay going by for the duration of this?
So in my community organizing, I go by Sonja, and I guess the Twitter the Twitter community would know me as an architect 918.
Mhm. All right. And for everyone watching, for those who may already know, I'm Quetza. Uh, Quetzacoa. My pronouns are she, they. And what pronouns are you going by?
I am gender fluid, and so it really changes from day to day. I don't really have very strong feelings because my relationship with my gender is very personal. I do like they, them, but I'm not really offended if someone says she or he
All
or
right,
even it.
got you. 100%. All right, so I'll be referring to you by they them for this recording, and that's completely okay.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome, perfect. All right then. Then let's get right into it. So this interview, I wanted to talk about how communities are, how they exist as part of a companion follow up to a video I'm making on the subject of communities, how they form, how they operate, and what happens to people in absence of them. You know, as we know, alienation of all kinds, whether it be in the
Mhm.
Marxist sense or in the more traditional sense of the term, the more colloquial sense, I should say, uh, can be staggeringly painful to deal with. Uh, and
Absolutely.
and communities themselves can be staggeringly painful to deal with at times.
Yes.
Um, so I wanted to just kick this off by asking, uh, what community or communities are you part of that you wish to speak on?
I think for the sake of this interview, I'm just going to stick with discussing my experience with organizing and activism communities, and that extends to street medic organizing and community defense communities.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I could probably speak on the anarchist Twitter community or online spaces like Discord, Twitter, things like that.
All right. Um, and yeah, and of course, as we all know, Twitter's like is a crapshoot. I'm never gonna call it X. It's just a crapshoot.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about like physical in person communities as well as online dynamics, there's a lot to go over.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
uh, so what has been your experiences in those communities? How have they altered your social life, your mental health, and your material conditions?
Um, my experience has been very mixed. I think that the local organizing spaces tend to be more serious, more focused. They're very goal driven for the most part. Of course, it's not like some perfect utopia. And then of course the online spaces, I think everyone has experienced, they can oftentimes tend to veer into more toxic, and a lot of petty drama can come up. Um, which is unfortunate because for a lot of people, online spaces are really the only place that they have to go for radical and anarchist spaces, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think for my mental health, it's definitely been a mix because the work itself can be really stressful and traumatizing to some degree. Um, but of course, for me, staying active in building a better world where all this shit doesn't exist, that also helps me from feeling powerless against it all and from just giving up and laying down and letting it all go to hell. Um, So, it's kind of a give and take. On one hand, it can be a little distressing and traumatizing, and on the other hand, it kind of makes me feel a little bit more empowered, a little bit less helpless in the face of all this. Um, of course, I see a therapist, but a lot of the things that distress me are things that really only other radicals will really understand. Other people who are in organizing and activism, who are aware of, the atrocities that are going on at all time, and
Right.
all of all of
It
the things that just distress all of us in this space.
right. It's like the veteran's dilemma, right? Like there are some things you can kind of only talk about with people who have lived it, and other people might be able to sympathize, well, mostly empathize, but they'll never really get it, right?
Yeah.
It's
It would require so much explanation, and really, until you've been there,
mm-hmm,
you're not really going to get it, even the best therapist, unless they are themselves radical, which some of them are.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, no,
You asked
exactly.
about you asked about my social life.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I would say that it definitely altered my social life in a big way. Um, I've had to really actively force myself to have a social life where I have, hobbies and things.
mm-hmm,
Um, because, if I'm just doing org work and activism, which I've done in the past, it can really burn me out. And there have been times in my life when I would meet people and they would say, like, what do you do for fun? What are your hobbies? And I didn't really have an answer for them because I don't consider organizing and activism a hobby, but it did consume my entire life.
mm-hmm.
And then I would become burned out by that. And um it's definitely negatively impacted some of my interpersonal relationships with family, with romantic partners, with friendships, with people who were very adamantly opposed to the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to really distance myself from those people. Um, but what I've found is that for every two like liberals that I have lost from my life, that I've gained, two or three radical friends. And so it really evens out and works out that way. Um, you said something material conditions.
Yeah, like your physical living situation, the day to day ability to sort of exist, right?
Um, so I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but I seriously would not be alive or housed or fed right now if it were not for the radical community, for the anarchist community. I'm disabled. I'm mentally ill. I'm queer. I'm genderqueer. I'm autistic, and of course, I struggle to exist in a world that is designed to kill people like me. You know,
Yeah,
um, but I was in a really bad situation a few years ago with a very abusive, violent partner, and I really tried every outlet through like domestic violence centers to try to get out of that, and it was all a dead end, and no one would help me. But when I reached out to my friends in the community and said, I need help, I need to get out, and I'm scared. Um, they really came through and they got me out, and they got me moved away to a new place, and um, helped me get set up in a new apartment, and helped me furnish the apartment, and have helped me with everything from emotional support to, um, keeping me fed to, just even a body to like lift the few things that I did have. And of course, in receiving this kind of help also in turn allows me to continue my org work and to continue staying active in building the community.
right. The aid is truly mutual, right?
Exactly, yeah. it is a thing. It's always been extremely important to me, and I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do now if it weren't for, the rest of the community catching me when I fell.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely, and far too often when people are, especially in this society, live a few dollars short of total catastrophe, or a few hands that they just don't have access to, short
Yes.
of being stuck in a horrible situation in perpetuity, and uh, without having other people. We're collective creatures. We it destroys us. It literally destroys us.
On
Especially
on
being
that front,
disabled.
it's wild that I'm disabled, and the very little bit of money that I do have, the poverty income limit is so crazy low that I'm literally just $35 over the limit where I would be able to receive help with housing, help with electric bills, help with food, help with my medical expenses, which are huge.
Hmm.
But no, it's just, that $35 is everything to the feds, I guess.
Yeah, no. For some reason, the government's like, "Sorry, you're not quite poor enough to
Not quite
uh,
poor enough to
for
die.
us to help you, but you're too poor to do it
Mhm.
without help. You get stuck in this poverty trap, right?
Yeah,
Everyone talks about how the American welfare system is, it's those words exactly. It's a poverty trap,
it
and
is. Yeah.
it's it often makes the problems worse because it's so badly designed.
Hmm.
And while you do get a few dollars here and there, it's nothing compared to the exacting toll of being stuck, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is designed to keep you down, and really to, almost in hopes that you'll just die, you
Yeah,
know.
it's like the same logic as like people putting their parents in an old folks home. It's like, all right,
Hmm.
not our problem. You'll die there.
Exactly. Out of
I won't
sight, out of
know.
mind.
Exactly. And
Yep.
and so without people around, you're the person in the old folks home now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Luckily, I've got a strong community
mhm.
um, that we work well together.
That's good. And you spoke on being disabled as well. Uh,
Mhm.
as well as being queer and disabled and being autistic, I can relate to all of those. It's hard, and people like just don't they don't understand the physical struggles you're going through, and they don't
Mhm.
understand the how that your mind operates fundamentally differently. Not for any like particularly like reasons that people might call bad, or not because you're disabled because you're autistic.
Right.
It's because society is disabling to autistic people.
Yeah, it's not set up for someone like me to function, but
Mm-hmm.
with my physical disability, it's a dynamic disability. It's what's considered an invisible disability, whereas if someone were living with me day to day, they would absolutely see it. But
Mm-hmm.
when the only time anyone sees me are on the days that I'm not, like, just crippled in bed,
Right.
people don't really see it.
It's like, oh,
And
you're
so,
fine, because they only see you when you're able.
right,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, there's nobody here to see me on the days that I can't, hobble to the kitchen and make myself food or anything.
Right. And and to that point, uh, how do you participate in community organizing, be it political or otherwise, or I should say, because you said that you do,
Mhm.
in what capacity, what effects have you had on your community?
Um, so I just want to address, so with working for an employer,
Mm-hmm.
um, being 100% reliable 100% of the time is, the of utmost importance to them. And if you are out sick for, 1 or 2 days a week, they're just going to fire you almost
Mm-hmm.
immediately. And Americans with Disabilities Act really doesn't come in to help with that, when you live in a state like Oklahoma, which is a right to work state, which basically just means your employer can fire you for any reason and not even give you a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They could just fire you for because they don't like the way you look, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so within the community, I've always been, within organizing spaces, and this is between three different cities that I've organized in. Um, I'm always very upfront about my limitations and the fact that I can't always be very reliable, and I can't predict when I'm going to have a good day, when I'm going to have a bad day. And everyone is very understanding of that, and they're just happy with the time and energy that I am able to contribute, which is great, because they're not just going to kick me out just because I, didn't show up to three work days or something like that. But so currently, I am an active member of Tulsa's local anarchist org, which is Scissortail, and also Cooperation Tulsa, which is a horizontal community org. It's not explicitly anarchist, but it is horizontal. And they have a special focus on things like social ecology, popular education, things of that nature. And then those two exist under the Federation of Redbud Aid Distribution.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are the three main ones that I'm active in currently. Um, and I think I've had a very positive impact on the community. I think that I have a lot of very useful skills and knowledge. I moved to Tulsa a couple of years ago, and Tulsa already had a lot of really impressive stuff going on whenever I got here, which is why I stayed. I saw that there was, fertile ground for building. I mean,
Right. I mean, like Tulsa's been historically it's been the site of some of the worst atrocities of white
Mhm.
supremacy. It's also been the site of historically tons of organizing, right?
Yes, yes. It's yeah, we had, the Tulsa Race Massacre was here just 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they destroyed Black Wall Street because it was doing so well, because Black people had found a way to really flourish
Right. And
in a community of their own. And so, white supremacists had to
God
tear that
forbid
down.
that.
And I don't think Tulsa has really
Mm-hmm.
um, recovered from that fully. There's still a lot of awful racism that goes on here. I can tell you, when I was growing up here, I was about 7, and my brother, who's adopted, he's half Black, half Cherokee. He was 14 at the time. And my mom and I came home from school. She'd pick me up from school, and there were 3 cops in our front yard beating the shit out of my brother because they thought he was trying to break into his own home. And um, so yeah, things haven't really changed a whole lot in the last 100 years, unfortunately. Um, so all right, effects on the community.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there was already a ton of really impressive org work and activism going on in Tulsa, and these organizations had been around for years before I got here. But I'm also bringing over 13 years of experience doing this sort of work, as well as like a large set of skills that were needed that weren't really here before that. Um, I have a lot of before I became disabled, I have a lot of work experience in like the tedious administrative stuff that every org has to handle with, doing um, documenting, facilitating, treasury, creating standard operating procedures, charters, things like that. Um, but I also have a lot of knowledge and skills in other things. I've been able to provide trainings here for things like catastrophic injury response, like beyond first aid, not just like the CPR, but things for like catastrophic injuries that people would see in something like a protest.
Mm-hmm.
And generally just share a lot of the knowledge that I've picked up over all these years. When I lived in Texas, I founded a very successful and active street medic group that did a lot of work beyond protest medicing, which is what people normally associate with like street medics.
Mm-hmm.
But we also had a harm reduction program. We had a mental health crisis intervention project where instead of having to call 911, you could call us and we would, go and talk to people. And a lot of us had, professional skills that fit with that role.
That's transformative.
We taught medical emergency first response courses. We provided basic medical care to folks that were living in the tent camps. And that group was highly valued and respected in the radical community as the place to go if you needed help. And we made a very um, tangible impact, emboldening the activist community to feel safer going and doing what they needed to do. And we had a measurable reduction in the number of opiate deaths within the first year of our harm reduction program that we started. So yeah, I think has been oh gosh, hold on.
Oh, you're all good. You're all good.
That was my alarm that I forgot to turn off.
No worries. It happens.
Am I back? I
Yes,
don't
yes,
see.
you are.
I'm also recovering from a respiratory infection, so pardon me while I try to breathe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, the medic group was, extremely well respected and called on within the community. And then, of course, whenever I moved to a different city, we also had a very large medic group there that also did a lot of work. And then, of course, community defense stuff, which I won't really get into too much, just because this is a public platform.
Right. Some things are no phones conversations. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds amazing. What you're talking about in you said Houston or Austin or
Austin, and then Dallas, and now
got it,
Tulsa.
got it.
Hmm.
The work you did over there would that's transformative. Being able to call someone other than the cops and then reliably show up to perform aid entirely transforms a key asset of the community, and it really showcases just how utterly unnecessary the police are in
Absolutely
any
unnecessary.
function. You know?
They often show up, and I myself have had mental health crisis where
Mm-hmm.
police showed up and things got way worse.
Yes.
Each time that they showed up, I've had friends who I've lost two friends during mental health crises where police actually killed them.
Yeah.
um it was like, how dare you threaten to kill yourself? That's our job.
It's
you know
fucking absurd.
it's absurd. And then it's just it's terrifying, and it causes people to not want to reach out for help or not want to send help to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a warm line where people could say like, hey, I'm not in a good place, like I need help. We could say, do you need us to like pick up, do you have any weapons that you need us to pick up? And so that you'll be safe and not have that temptation there, and we would be there as quick as possible.
And that's something that frankly we need everywhere. Because as you've said, in 2 year experiences, when the police show up, the best they can do is nothing. That is the
Yeah.
absolute best case scenario is they show up and leave because they couldn't be bothered. The
Yeah.
worst case scenario is they act, and
Yep.
that's a horrible situation to be in, right? So
Yeah.
being able to do that's incredible. And to your work that you do in Tulsa, I a spoiler alert for the viewers. I've been to Tulsa, and y'all do amazing work. With mutual aid distribution, as zine distribution, working on land projects.
We
It's
have the rematriation of
mm-hmm,
the land with Flat Rock.
mm-hmm,
We have our free stores, where we provide things that people need for free, and they can give us what they don't need. Clothes, food,
mm-hmm.
um, shoes, hygiene products, things like that.
Right. I mean, like, and it goes to show, like, society doesn't need money. It just needs to grow a heart, right?
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
needs to
We have,
get
we
moving.
have we have false scarcity where
Hmm.
the excess is being hoarded away so that it seems like there's not enough, and
Exactly.
that promotes the competitiveness, where everyone is like really just keeping everything for themselves. And yeah, we're all trying to turn that around.
Hmm. Exactly. I forget who put it. They were talking in relation to so-called third world countries. They're not underdeveloped. They're overexploited, right? And the same
Yeah,
thing goes for
yeah,
local communities.
yep, yeah. The continent of Africa is
Hmm.
the richest continent in the world
Hmm.
because of the resources that it has, but they've been colonized and exploited so badly, that you know we're what we're seeing there is the direct result of people coming in and exploiting
Right.
the whole continent.
Right, and the way the state and capitalism functions is to colonize its society internally as well. It's the analog to colonization
Hmm.
is a pretty direct parallel with just
Yep.
variation in degrees of brutality, right? And
Hmm.
that's what the state does to the society that it parasitizes,
Yep.
And that's what business does to the society
Yeah.
that it parasitizes. You have an
I
enormous
actually
amount of
just pointed
resources.
out I actually just pointed out yesterday that I was like, why is nobody talking about the fact that, well, like just a few years ago in 2019, our geologists confirmed that there's like a huge reserve of natural fuel energy, like oil and natural gas, um, sitting right around and under Palestinian land,
Right, the
like
Levantine
near
Basin, right?
Lebanon and Syria. And look at what like Lebanon and Syria and Palestine have been going through, while
Mm-hmm.
Israel is just expanding thanks to the US. And
Right.
that's we were talking about a nation that has free healthcare and education, and the US doesn't, and we're still sending like $10 billion to them so that they can colonize these places. And
Yeah.
we got to think why there are resources there that we want,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah. I mean, like, why on earth would we want to have healthcare when we have bombs, right? No, it's fucking horrible. I
I
almost
don't
have
mean
to
to laugh,
laugh,
but
you
sometimes
know?
it's so horrific that all I can do is laugh. Just
Yeah.
like it's so obvious, and like what monsters.
Yeah. It, the world we live in is a degree of absurdity that if you don't laugh at it, you'll cry.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
And honestly, that is my trauma response, is to not cry about things, just to laugh and then get to work disassembling it.
Yeah. I mean, like, and it's gotta be destroyed, and every person who gets moving on that in whatever
Yeah.
capacity they can, and like what you said earlier, like, not everyone is able to physically to do physical activism, but in any
Uh,
capacity whatsoever, even
yeah.
convincing another person, that is incredibly
Mhm.
powerful. You know, and
Absolutely. And just even things like popular education can be done from home. But honestly, anyone can start an org. I've had many people reach out to me to say, "Hey, I see what y'all are doing in Tulsa. I would love to do something like that. I wish we had something like that here." And I'm like, "Do it. Just do it. All you need is you and another person. I will send you all of our charters, and that is the foundation. That is the hard part. And then just start doing it, and people will come out of the woodwork."
yeah,
I did the same thing, whenever I left Austin. I was like, look, here is the charter, here's the foundation. Just take it and run with it, make it yours.
yeah, exactly. Build it and they will come, right?
That is very true. That is exactly how you have to do it. You're not going to get people on board until they see that you're actually doing something, and then they'll come and help.
Right. Up until then, it's you and your buddy with a crazy idea. So maybe let's
Yeah.
not starve people.
Yeah.
And then
People
you
don't
go.
join in with ideas. They don't really get on board with potential,
Mm-hmm.
They want to see that something's being done, and then they jump in and help. And
Right.
you just start small, and the more people you have, the more projects you can take on and build from there.
Exactly. And people need a reason to believe that they're not going to just be alienated like everything else before they get activated, right? And
Absolutely, yeah.
and to that, actually, to that point, uh, what challenges do you face in maneuvering in collective spaces? What struggles have presented themselves within those communities, and how are they handled?
I would say, but for me personally, like I said before, having a dynamic disability that's unpredictable and but also directly linked to my stress levels, that definitely affects how much I can take on at any given time. Um, it affects like how reliable I can be with timeliness, but I'm always very open in disclosing that so that everyone understands that right off the bat. I don't hide it from them. And they're all very understanding and supportive. We actually have a what's called a capacity monitor, which is basically we check in with each other and say, hey, how are you doing on your capacity? Green, yellow, red. And if you're in the green or yellow, would you feel comfortable taking on this task that needs to be done?
Mm-hmm.
Just so we know where everybody's at, and it's not just one person taking on all of everything or taking on more than they feel that they can. Um, but I think, sorry, I'm still like recovering from this
No
virus.
worries. I am on so many medications right now.
I didn't take any today because I wanted to be lucid enough
Mm-hmm.
to have a conversation. But so more broadly, I really don't know of anyone that is involved in this work who isn't deeply traumatized and broken either by systemic oppression and abuse that we all live under, or by interpersonal abuse that we've been through. And for a lot of us, it's actually that is the thing that radicalized us. That is
Mm-hmm.
the thing that made us realize, like, this is not working for the people. Like, this is actually breaking the people. um but unfortunately, of course, very few people are able to access the resources that are needed to heal from those traumas. Very few people are able to like get therapy or get medical care or medications, things like that that they would need to be fully healthy, functional people. Um,
Right
and
there.
and
There we go.
and frankly,
Here. I'm just moving the camera
okay,
to preserve my partner's
we can cut this
anonymity.
part out if you want to edit.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do that just because. Boom! It is just there. We go.
Okay.
All right. As you were saying.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Sorry, I needed to take a water break.
No, of course.
So anyway, as I was saying, like, I don't really know very many people or really any people involved in this work who aren't already deeply traumatized by either the system or interpersonal abuse or things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and they don't have access to the resources that they would need to process through and heal from those things. And so oftentimes we see that where we would hope that there would be a lot of understanding and support of one another for those things, that in fact people's traumas can actually clash and create discord and strife when those traumas don't mix well.
Right.
um and of course that's not their fault, but it does happen. um but to handle these conflicts, here in Tulsa, our orgs, well, first of all, we have a very well detailed charter with points of unity that are intended to ensure that the people who join us are aligned with our values of things like higher anti-hierarchy, pro-horizontalism, intersectionality, things like that. And with Scissortail membership, the anarchist, explicitly anarchist org, it's a little more exclusive to just anarchists, specifically to organized or also called social anarchism. And this just helps ensure that everybody's, to start with, just on the same page foundationally.
Mm-hmm.
But additionally, we also have these extremely detailed conflict resolution procedures with guidelines on issues that range anywhere from simple things like personality conflicts, all the way up to real harm and violence, and with suggestions on how those can be handled, with attempts to reach restorative and transformative conclusion when that's possible, of course. And this actually does create more group cohesion. Conflict is not a bad thing. You just have to be able to work through it in a healthy way, and then that actually creates stronger bonds within a community.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, like
but
even to that point, if I may, even
yeah,
having established rules on or established guidelines to say, because they're not
yeah,
hard and set, has a
correct.
chilling effect on conflict. Even if they're never used, just
Mhm.
having them makes people feel safe enough to be able to navigate
Yeah.
conflict autonomously.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, like, um any group, um any group, especially the bigger it gets, the more number of people you have, with various personalities, um, you will eventually run into conflict. You just will, no matter what. And if you don't have something in place to help the group navigate those things, the group will just fracture, fractally off into smaller and smaller groups, and then it'll just die. And the groups here have managed to stay alive as many years as it has, together, because these measures are in place, because there are guides on how to handle these.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been very effective to keep us going.
But yeah, that's awesome. And it speaks to what happens when people get together to really try and hammer out and solve issues, and or
Hmm.
and create frameworks through which to solve issues that maybe haven't come up yet. But if we
Yep.
if we tackle them now ahead of time, we might be wrong, but we have a smaller chance of being wrong if we at least put in an effort.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You just have to work through it. Like I said, conflict isn't bad. You just have to have, healthy communication and ways to work through it, and it can actually strengthen you.
Right, exactly. Conflict is healthy when it's allowed to remain within navigatable quantities, right? Well,
Yes, absolutely.
all right, that's wonderful. We're gonna pivot here and talk about what happens in absence of community, because so far we've talked about all the amazing, wonderful things that the community is capable of, as well as the struggles, and oftentimes
Mhm.
when people are transitioning from one community to another, they
Mhm.
experience they lose people just as they're gaining people. You've talked about they have to learn new means of connecting to one another.
Right. Mhm.
But in absence of that, or if they get lost in transit, people experience alienation, which is
Right.
the
Mhm.
sense of being isolated from yourself, from
Yeah.
your context, and in the Marxist sense, even from your labor itself, your capacity to even produce.
Right. Marx's theory of alienation. Yeah.
Hmm.
Very familiar with that one.
And so, what is your experience with alienation?
Um, with all of these, like, identity labels that I fit into between gender and sexuality and disability, and especially with being autistic, and just being a sensitive person who was raised with an awareness of, how horrific the world system really is. Um, I've definitely experienced a lot of alienation, like, since childhood, and literally feeling like I am an alien born into the wrong world, and feeling very embarrassed to realize that I've showed up to a masquerade ball wearing my real face, and
Yeah,
everyone else not. And so I always felt very alone, and I remember even asking other kids, like, how do I be normal? And they're like, well, what are you talking about?
you just do, right? It's
Um,
like, No.
Yeah. So yeah, I learned that I had to pretend to be someone else, just to be included in social circles. And then of course, even then I felt like I was alone even when I was in a room full of people. I would be at a party with people, but I'd be over like petting the cat and not talking to anyone because I just felt like such an outsider and alone. Um, but after getting involved in organizing and activism, I really felt that I'd found my people. And I felt a lot less alone, like less that I had to hide who I am and how I feel and what values are really important to me and what things concern me. And I really found myself as well that way. Um, Unfortunately, uh, some alienation can still creep into the orgs. But really, I felt a lot less alienated once I joined activism and org work because it was a lot of people that are, very similar to myself and also have the same values as myself.
Right, and speaking of feeling like an alien in a room full of people, we are tragically we are often never more alone than when we are surrounded by people who can't understand us. Right.
Oh yeah, because then it points out just how alien you are to the rest of these people, and really we're not. It's that so many people have been conditioned into a thing that we somehow have managed to not be conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
We've been resistant to that, and that's of course a big part of why the system wants us to die.
Right. It's like being in a dark room and then someone opening up the blinds on a completely normally light lit day. It still blinds you. You know,
Hmm.
because we often we dissociate through through the sense of just being alone, because what else is
Yeah.
there to do? That's traumatic. It's traumatic in the literal
Hmm.
biochemical sense
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it is as to be isolated is as damaging as being punched in the face, you know.
It absolutely is. We actually have psychology studies that show exactly how damaging and destructive it is to a person's well-being, not just their psyche, but it actually physically impacts them on a physiological basis as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It can be devastating. And speaking of which, uh, what reactions to alienation do you see people have?
Um, well, I think, and probably most people who are going to end up watching this know that we live under a system that deliberately makes people feel alienated from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Again, back to the Marx theory of alienation. Because that alienation, that push for rugged individualism and each man as an island kind of thing, and the only community you're allowed to have is your nuclear family unit,
Mm-hmm.
because that benefits the system. It kills cooperation between us. It sows a sense of competitiveness. Everyone's out to get each other, dog eat dog, and that benefits the system, makes the system work a lot better for the people that it works for and not for us, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right. I mean, like, if people were not so isolated from one another socially, physically, we might start to figure out collectively that this is really
yeah.
fucked. It's
And that is
extremely
how
fucked.
revolutions have started in the past, is that people got to talking. But we've got an entire nation of people who all of them are all feeling alienated and alone. And they're all feeling alone together at the same time, not really realizing that everyone else is feeling the exact same way. Everyone puts on this mask and this they talk about the good things on their Facebook pages, and then everyone is like, why is everyone else having such a good life? And it's, well, I guess nobody's talking about the bad parts of it. But like I said, even within the radical community, I still see people who hold on to a lot of that conditioning of rugged individualism,
Mm-hmm.
And people who feel like they are a burden, and people who um, feel that we all have to fight our own personal battles alone. That's not even always possible, but I see people try it often to their own demise. um and then a lot of times in activism, we do these incredibly stressful things and traumatic things, like summer of 2020. I was seeing us going out,
Yeah.
and some of us literally being brutalized, and then going home alone to process it alone. And then that can actually further solidify and crystallize that trauma
Yeah.
into actual PTSD. And I had a hard time getting people to agree to do like debriefing, like let's get together after this, and let's talk about what the fuck we just went through. But it's really hard to fight that conditioning that somebody else always has it worse, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not allowed to complain or ask for help. Um,
Right.
and or they have just like that one person they want to talk to. And I always say this, again and again, that your friends don't have to be your comrades, and your comrades don't have to be your friends, but we do have to stick together, and we do have to form healthy, functional, working relationships to fight this fight.
Exactly, and it's like I just looked this up right now. I remember remembering this poem. It's by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. It's "We Wear the Mask." It's a
Hmm.
really famous one, and the second stanza really I think calls out to it, and it says we wear. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. It talks quite literally to the fact that we collectively force ourselves and each other to don masks of joy and happiness, in,
Hmm.
which only compounds the pain as we not
Yeah.
only become separated from each other, like we become like distended, we become disconnected from our own sense of selves. We
Yes.
everyone is living a double life. That there is the horrid agony within the self that begs to be seen, that begs to be comforted by
Yeah.
another creature. And then there is the everyday smile, the laugh, the depression jokes, the I'm gonna redacted myself, because it's a lot easier to get through it when you're laughing, and
That
it's a lot.
gallows humor,
Yeah.
the morbid humor. I'm definitely
Mm-hmm.
an enjoyer of the gallows humor.
As
I find that I tell the most jokes when I'm at my lowest points.
Yeah, same here. Uh, it's one of my friends actually once said to the word gallows humor, better the gallows humor than the gallows, right? Yeah, and I'm like, well, how about neither?
Yeah,
What about
what is
radical
neither?
honesty?
Yeah,
And the people react poorly to that honesty because it scares them. The
yeah,
idea that they have the capacity to if someone asks how is your day, to really let them know if that person is actually interested, and we don't
yeah.
have
People
to
are
be
very
alone.
attached to their dissociative states, and they
Yeah,
don't want to be pulled out of it.
yeah, because it's almost soothing.
Yeah,
If you can maintain the dissociation, you could do anything except be happy.
absolutely.
You know.
I think, and that's also like a reason why we have such a huge, substance use
Mm-hmm.
issue here,
Yeah.
is that the that world is less painful than the reality for people. But unfortunately, we've got to face it.
Right.
We've got to do something.
Right. It's a major driver of the opioid crisis. Like
100%,
the
100%.
there's of course pharmaceutical companies just deciding let's just you know kill everyone in the Rust Belt because it makes money, and
Yeah.
but then there's also the fact, why are people attracted to these in the pharmaceutical companies could pump out opioids as much as they wanted to, but if
Hmm.
people had no desire to do them, if it wasn't speaking
Yeah.
to some need maladaptively, then we wouldn't be having the scale of crisis we're having now, right?
We can look at this in real time and look at places like Chiapas, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't have these kind of substance abuse issues. And in fact, like, they produce coffee as part of their like trade. Is they make coffee, and their coffee is,
It's good.
I've actually had it,
It's good
and
ass
it's
coffee.
very low caffeine content,
Mm-hmm.
but the Zapatistas do not understand why Americans want such extreme caffeine. But like, it's funny to quote this because I am an anarchist, but Marx did predict this because he was saying eventually the working class is going to be hooked on both stimulants and depressants at the same time, because like
Yeah.
the incessant push for productivity is going to drive them to consume more and more you
Weed and
speedy things and
coffee. Weed
caffeine.
and coffee.
It's something to put them asleep at night so they can actually sleep despite their discomfort and distress.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Chiapas they don't really have those kind of issues, and even like caffeine addiction isn't really a thing there.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it just goes to show that, like, whenever anyone's like, Marx failed to consider this, no, dog, he did.
No,
He really did.
not either. Yeah. And I was raised on Marx. I was raised by a Marxist.
He really did
And
actually predict it. He may not have predicted the
yeah.
internet, but he predicted mass communication, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
You know, like, but yeah, it shows like the Zapatistas don't have that problem because their communities, like their
It's not profit driven.
it's not profit driven.
It's driven for to have an enjoyable life.
Right,
The
like the
primary goal is
Caracoles,
to have liberty and a life that's worth living.
right? I mean, like the Caracoles move slowly and they move collectively together. People check up on each other all the time because they are given the economic capacity to have the free time necessary to connect with one another because it's impossible to connect to people if you
Hmm.
don't have the time to. That's the reason why bullshit
Exactly.
like
That's
speed.
deliberate.
That's the reason why bullshit like speed dating exists. That's not healthy. That's not
Uh,
how. That's not healthy courtship. But it's fast and you can fit it in between your two jobs. You know, it's wild. We have this very obsessed this culture that's obsessed with productivity because it's economically profitable that leads people to try
yeah.
to hyper optimize their own life, but we are humans were meant to be chilling by a stream eating cashews and mangoes, not
That's what I tell people. They're like, look, life isn't all about like leisure and play. And I said, yes, the fuck it is.
the
All of
point.
this awful shit that we go through, all of the work that we do is literally just so that we can get to the leisure and play.
Like
Like that is our whole reason for
that
existing,
was
or
the
we would
goal.
just like stopped existing a long time ago.
Like when people's parents are like, it's the job of the parent to make sure the kids don't suffer like the parent did. I'm like, yes, that was the goal, right? We lost the sauce. We got lost in the
Yeah.
sauce somewhere in there, and it was called capitalism doing a capitalism,
Yeah.
and patriarchy doing a patriarchy, and every other hierarchical
Mhm.
system pushing towards optimization of accumulation of power, right?
Mhm.
And the way that is reflected in the individual, in the smallest unit of power of exploitation of power, is alienation,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, and that leads us with our final question, which is, can you? It's less of a question, but it's more of a just go off. Uh, can you tell me about an experience in as little or as much detail as you would like, where the causes of a person or community's alienation was confronted? How was that handled, and what were the results?
Um, that's gonna be like a probably gonna end up being a big answer. I would say like immediately, um, I think about with Starbucks, and they have these bullshit rules about like you can't You can't like distribute materials, which is illegal, by the way. You can't distribute materials that talk about like unionizing. You're not allowed to talk about wages, which both of those things are illegal to force your employees to do, but if they can threaten all they want.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, the that we've got like new social customs where it's supposed to be weird to talk to your neighbors. Odd as that sounds. I've heard the saying "good fences make good neighbors," which sounds
No,
wrong to me.
that's just incorrect on its face.
That's incorrect. And anytime I move into a new place, I always introduce myself to all my neighbors. And I'll say, "Hey, I'm Sonja," and I'll give them my phone number. I'll say, like, if you ever need to reach me, if anything is weird or if there's like a noise complaint, because I love to crank my records up to crazy loud in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the night. And if I'm ever too loud for you, like, just text me. Don't like call security on me. Just like send me a text and be like, "Shut the fuck up," and I'll do it.
Yeah, it seems like
Or
whoever
if
made
you
that
need something,
idea.
if, like the building is on fire, just text me and tell me. And I do that, and most of the time they look at me like I've got three heads. Like, why is she talking to me? Does she not understand that neighbors don't talk? And it's so weird, this dynamic of expectation. And then, like I said, like the work taboos where you're not really supposed to like fraternize with your coworkers outside of a work setting. And they even forbid like romantic relationships and things like that. You're not supposed to talk about your wages, which you absolutely should all the time.
If the
Always talk about your
boss
wages.
tells you don't do it, that means you should absolutely do it.
Absolutely do. So the bosses they like to try to pit the employees against each other so that now the employees are monitoring each other and narking each other out,
Mm-hmm.
which interestingly enough is actually a cult tactic. A
Yep.
cult tactic where they will pit the cult members against each other so that they're all monitoring each other and ratting each other out anytime they do anything that the cult leaders don't like.
And actually,
And then
I actually have
uh,
like I had the idea for a video talking about how much the modern workplace mirrors cults.
it does absolutely. I would love to read that.
Yeah. I have a video idea. It's just been sitting in my notes because I'm like, how do I connect this? I want to. This is juicy. It's a lot there. Uh,
I will tell you, there are handbooks that are publicly available from cult leaders where they share their, not even like specifically cults, but if you look at things like MLMs, like not,
Marxist
not like
Leninist Maoist.
like the multi-level marketing
What's
to
the
like
difference?
gambling like that, and like they follow the same cult tactics, and they will have it laid out step by step, and when you're reading through those you will see how directly employers and corporations um put these into play with the workspace.
Mm-hmm.
Um but as far as like fraternizing with your coworkers, like we really don't have very many third spaces left anymore, almost none.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and when I say third spaces, you probably know what I mean, but it's just not work, not home, but a place where people can just hang out and chat with strangers and people within their neighborhood, their community, their city,
Mm-hmm.
without the expectation of spending money and then getting out um
Yep.
once you've paid for your stuff. And then even at coffee shops, I don't really see strangers striking up conversations with each other. People go there to do their work on their laptop, and then they don't really talk to each other unless they came there together.
And
um
and how depressing is it that people go to a coffee shop to continue doing work? Like that's
Alone in a room full of people by themselves, like, I
like
understand, like, as an autistic, like, I do get body doubling because I work best that way,
mhm.
but it's just bizarre to see no one talking to each other at
Right.
all.
And
Like sometimes people do that in bars, but
mhm.
honestly, I think we need to get away from our alcohol culture because I
Yeah.
don't think that and even there, you're expected to spend money. And when I
Yes.
go to a venue, I just drink water because I don't drink. I'm poor as shit. So I can't even afford to drink, but I'll just have water. And I know that like upsets bartenders because that's money that they're not making, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even like you can't even like sit in a park if if you look homeless. You got to look like you have a home and money to sit in a park, or else they'll kick you out. And
God forbid you're
I
bumming it.
haven't seen I haven't it was something I haven't seen since like when I was a kid in the 80s. I haven't seen block parties since the 80s. Where did that go? Are they still happening in other places that I'm just not aware of? Because I haven't seen it in over 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't have third spaces for people to really congregate and talk about things and feel less alienated and start to realize that we do share the same struggles and we do share the same enemies,
Mm-hmm.
which, the ruling class is our bosses, it's our politicians.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like I said, even in anarchist spaces, I'm seeing alienation get worse, and I'm actually seeing a lot of in-group, out-group dynamics, a lot of cliques, a lot of ostracizing people over really minor things, what I would consider minor things in the grand scale of everything that's going on. Um, and I know it's kind of a contentious subject, but one thing that I'm seeing is like this really excessive use of like cancel culture and call out culture versus like call in culture where you're having an actual conversation to inform and educate each other on like why this thing is wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like one thing to use these tactics against people that have a lot of real power and clout, like politicians and lawmakers and actual
Or
capitalists, like
or the local abuser, right?
an actual like abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, I always encourage criticism of literally everything and debate of ideas and beliefs, and that's how we grow. But this is like, we're having a tendency to where somebody has one bad opinion, and instead of really sitting down and having like a full conversation about it, they're just throw the whole person away.
Right.
And that doesn't like foster growth. That really uh, furthers the alienation and fear of alienation. Like, what if I'm next if I say the wrong thing because I was uneducated about a thing, and suddenly I wake up the next day and like 150 people have blocked me because somebody demanded that there be blockchains on everyone that has ever interacted with me ever. And
Right. Which is
honestly, I
just like
feel
that.
like it's a mistake for
It,
our community to do that. It's just sowing more alienation. But it's just that it's going overboard with it.
mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm seeing it not really as a way to like uh police people, but almost as a way for people to gain social points, like
Yes.
almost like a performative thing where like you're getting like accolades because you owned this person or whatever it is. You put them down and bash them, and now you've got social points for doing that because you hated someone effectively, and you got your friends to do it too. And now it's playing out the whole meme of like, oh no, someone's wrong on the internet. I have to bash them and put them in their place before I can go to bed. Or like, oh, I have to call them a fed, or I have to call them a fascist or a garbage human being. And there's really no nuance. It's very binary, black and white, where you're either an all good person or you're an all bad person. And
Mm-hmm.
I just, I don't think
I don't think it's accurate
there's just
to
no
like
room for
people.
discussion or expansion of knowledge and understanding. And now
Mm-hmm.
it's just like the public admonishment of a perceived villain because they had a bad opinion. And it really actually reminds me a lot of the weird, like culty, tanky struggle sessions.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is, like, whenever a whole bunch of people dogpile someone, they immediately just go into defense mode. They panic. They don't even think about what was going on. They're just trying to stop themselves from being like fully ostracized. Um,
Right. Which actually
and
often leads to to much more intense negative
Yeah,
reactions. And
they'll dig their it's a self-defense tactic where they're a response rather where they'll just dig their heels in
mm-hmm,
and instead of being like, oh God, I am a garbage person, I am worthless, I should just yeet myself into the sun, right?
mm-hmm,
But I don't know how the people who participate in that kind of those kind of tactics, how are they not constantly filled with anxiety about themselves ending up on the receiving end of that and then finding themselves ostracized from an entire community because they were wrong once and uneducated about something just once. And it seems extremely alienating. And I feel like it's just going to break us
mm-hmm.
down into smaller and smaller little fractals, affinity group of one kind of deal
Atomized,
until,
right?
yeah, until we have no cohesion at all and we can't face the real enemies. And,
Mm-hmm.
right now we've got literal genocides going on here and abroad, and
Free Palestine,
we
by the
need each
way.
other. Free Palestine. How about let's also stop like genociding trans and queer people here.
And our
Stop
and
the government from
Armenians.
like kidnapping our children. We need each other now more than ever. Shit's getting really, really fucking bad out there right now. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. And, if we keep fracturing into smaller and smaller cliques, we are not going to survive this. We are not going to survive. We are never going to build something that can defeat like our real enemy and liberate us and keep us safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to do better. We have to do better. And, gaining brownie points, gold stars, it's not going to get the job done.
Right. I'd rather be wrong and free than have than have everyone like me and get shot by the feds because I'm trans.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would I would much rather be alive to be wrong.
I'm perfectly fine with like being wrong and then getting corrected. I prefer that. Like tell me if I am wrong and I will like retrace my steps. Like my personal motto is yesterday's me as a fool and a coward, and
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow's me will think the same thing about today's me, because every day I'm like finding out something I thought was wrong and I'm
Yeah.
correcting every day.
I mean, my thought process is for everything I've read, I'm a dumbass until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
I know plenty, but the moment I'm wrong, everything I knew that was right doesn't matter as much as becoming more educated right now matters. But I
Well,
think
that's another reason why I feel that we need to create we need to have a way for it to be safe to be wrong.
yes,
Like, yes, you are responsible for like then correcting yourself and educating yourself to be right, but it should be safe to be wrong. It shouldn't be a thing that's going to get you ostracized forever and just go live in a hut somewhere by
right,
yourself because you had a bad opinion because you didn't understand everything.
right, and it feels like absurd on its face when it's like pointed out, right? Like
Yeah.
especially because like the reason why you're talking about how do these people not live in fear? They do. They're
Yeah.
constantly in fear. And the reason why is because they live in an ecosystem where if they're wrong, they will be attacked unless everyone likes them. And so how do you
Yeah.
get people to like you is you
I
attack
don't know,
others.
Quetza, why don't you explain it to us, because
Yeah,
you're like
right?
the Quora of the anarchist community.
It was all part of my plan. Now I can be wrong. No,
You were.
but no, I'm wrong. I am confidently wrong far more than I am confidently right, and I'm okay with that because
You're always open
I will
you're always
confidently
open to correction.
yeah because I will confidently admit that I am wrong, or
Hmm.
like God in comment sections I've been like, oh shit, you're
Yeah.
right. Oops.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
like, what else am I supposed to say? The person was right. What am I gonna do? Spare my ego? Stupid.
It seems when I do that, it people are like shocked. They're like, wow, someone actually like conceded
No,
to
there's like
being wrong. And it's like,
there's like
yes.
three reactions, right? There's cool, all right, that's great. There's I'm getting mad at you because you're agreeing with me now.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I was expecting a fight, and god damn it, I'm gonna get one.
yeah. That is a thing. Like people come for a fight and then they'll get mad when you don't give them one, and it's like, I'm agreeing with you. What do you want? Like,
And
do you
then
want me to
there's
call you a name? Like, you're a goofy snot monster. Does that make you feel better? Like,
you're an absolute gooberton. How does that make you feel? Aha, right? Like no, but the reason why people do that is because they're afraid that they're gonna get canceled, right?
right. Yeah. But
And
if they're on the side of the committee doing the canceling, that kind of makes them feel that they're shielded from it. But that
it's
is not
not.
true. They will turn on you
Mm-hmm.
like any day. They will always be looking for the next target,
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
it is a crab in a pot kind of mentality to
Mm-hmm.
you make themselves feel better by dragging someone else down so that they can feel, well, at least I'm not that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
And,
just very unhealthy, and it actually, yeah, I can't imagine. I would just live in terror.
yeah,
um
for people on the internet, like,
yeah, well, that's the thing. And like I said, that many people, for me, like, my community exists here in real life. Like, I can go and shake hands with my homies and my comrades and go out to Flat Rock and do like a work day. And so I'm not like completely dependent on what people on Twitter think of me.
you're not
And
terminally online.
I'm not terminally online.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, it's shocking and amazing, I know, but no, I'm not terminally online. And I actually don't I'm not particularly hurt when the pitchforks come out for me. I'm just like, okay, and because honestly, they're gonna forget about it in 2 weeks. And
Less.
it's like,
They'll forget about it in like
it's like,
4 days.
that's cool, because I take a break from Twitter and I'll just go do the work that I'm supposed to be doing and writing the essays I'm supposed to be writing, and facilitating the meetings I'm supposed to be doing.
Right, and before anyone, to that point, before anyone in the comment sections of this video is like, you're against cancel culture, anti-feminist. I'm like, no, okay, so like
No,
the
not at
different
all. Not
the
at all.
difference is if everyone's
Everything in
gathering together,
moderation.
like
Yeah,
if everyone's gathering together to go fuck up someone who deserves to be fucked up,
yeah,
like if someone assaults someone or threatens to assault someone, they don't have to
yeah.
initiate it for it to be wrong, right?
Right.
It,
Yeah,
fuck them up, like mess that person up, make that day the day that they regret for the rest of their life,
right.
if they survive it, right? Like it's if a person is doing that, please kick their butt.
Yeah.
People who've been abused collectively, doing collective action to take down a celebrity, I live
Uh-huh.
for that. That is awesome. What is not
Right.
okay is when like someone says something that's even potentially very ignorant, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone's like, what are you talking about? I support Jewish people. That's why I'm pro-Israel. You're like, no. Like, okay,
Yeah,
real quick,
that's definitely going on a lot right now.
it's like real quick, Bestie. You can be
Especially.
pro-Jewish without being pro-Israel because Israel is also anti-Jewish. Zionism is ultimately an insult to everything that Judaism stands for, right?
Well, Judaism existed for 5,000 years before
Exactly.
Israel, and it existed in a diaspora. and
Mm-hmm.
and Israel can stand up and say that it speaks for all Jews, but I can also stand here and say I speak for all gingers. That doesn't make it true. I
Yeah,
represent all gingers.
I I,
That
I,
is
I I
not true.
represent all winged serpent gods because I'm Quetza. That doesn't make it true.
Face. Uh,
Well, maybe for me, I'm missing that.
yeah, but yeah, no, I think when I'm talking about, like,
Mm-hmm.
canceling people within our own community over things like a poorly worded
Tweet.
opinion, where like the opinion itself isn't really wrong, but they chose poor wording.
Mm-hmm.
And people will descend on that person, and just that person is now, uh their name is mud as far as everyone is concerned.
Unlovable, barely human.
Yeah, it's just throw the whole person away. And we're never going to get anywhere that way. And no one is going to really change their views by
Yeah.
that, because they're immediately psychologically they are forced into that self-defense mode where
Mm-hmm.
they aren't really even able to do the introspection because they are just trying to fight off the attacks.
Right. Exactly.
We have to have like, we have to have actual conversations, not just discourse.
Right. Discourse as a culture, as an idea, that was probably a mistake. Like you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and then throw the bathtub at the baby. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's it's
Well,
bad.
and that's why I say Twitter is toxic. It, it doesn't really, you can't really have a nuanced conversation when you're limited to like 120 characters.
Yeah. And
And
also,
also whenever you don't have to see someone face to face and see the humanity in them to
mhm,
have those discussions. And like, I've told you, like I organize with Anarch. He lives in the same city and is involved in organizing. And we disagree all the time. We butt heads all the time. We argue. We like, it gets heated sometimes. And people don't see it because I have the luxury of doing it to his face.
right. I mean he's
Like
one of the
telling him
smartest
wrong to his
dumbasses I
face.
know. You know?
And we have productive discussions where we learn a lot from those things.
Mhm.
And that is just, you can't really do that on a platform like Twitter.
Yeah. And and what's really wild is when it leaves online and happens physically, and you start to notice that like people who react, who start doing that clout chasing behavior, you can see very clearly
Yeah,
in person that this is being done to accumulate power, right?
absolutely. And I see it, and it's frustrating. It's
Mm-hmm.
frustrating, but I understand that, when people feel powerless, that feels like that's the only route that they can go to feel any sense of power. But we have to join collectively and express our collective power. And we're not going to be able to get that if we are just, pigeonholing each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people don't fully because I think people hear those words, they don't fully understand what that means to collectively join our powers. It means literally talk to each other about
Hmm.
things and then
Yeah,
create a plan of action, execute the plan of action, iterate. And it's going to
yeah.
be uncomfortable because this is the most socially anxious generation ever. But
With
God,
well reason to feel that way.
with a lot of good
And
reasons to it,
we're
you know?
fighting against a lot of conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I was recently informed that I'm an elder because I'm in my 40s.
Yeah.
Um,
So you're an
but
elder queer.
yeah, yeah. So, I come from a generation that received a lot of conditioning before the gloves came off. Like I remember, I was an adult by the time 9/11 happened. I remember like before the internet. And so people that are younger than I am, like Gen Z and then now Gen Alpha, they didn't have the decades of conditioning before getting to that point. And so they are the ones that are really just like, they just got dropped in it, and they're like, what the fuck, this is fucked up. They're really the first generation that really is just like, wasn't even conditioned to accept it, and they're not accepting it, and
Right.
they're fighting it full force. And I'm over here just like, go bestie, I will help you, I will cheer you on. I'll provide like whatever you need to help get the job done. I'll share my knowledge and skills that I've been
Yeah.
gaining for 13, 14 years now.
I mean, exactly. I mean, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha are the first international generations. Truly
Yes.
international. Here's to the Gen Z international, right? Like, and I hear this on the internet all the time that Gen Z will burn down the government but can't talk to each other. And
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, actually, it's a lot easier to vent your frustrations than it is to be vulnerable.
I feel like Gen Z is like the generation, and God bless you, well, or whatever, Satan bless you, whatever you want. Um, but the generation, like, they would sooner throw a Molotov cocktail than pick up the phone and make a phone call to like the customer service line. Like they're way more comfortable with like,
Going
and
to
I get it.
war is so much easier
Oh yeah,
than
yeah.
calling my insurance. Like,
I was, the movie Scream, like that makes total sense to me that like there's a horror film out there that the whole premise of the horror film is the terror of having to talk to a stranger on the phone. Like I get it. I get it.
yeah, it's yeah, no, and I think that that speaks to how to how alienated communities turn on each other to gain power, because people do want power, and it's not
Yeah.
in the negative sense. It's not in the we're all power hungry. This is not, we're not Thomas Hobbes here. It's
No,
not
it's not that
Leviathan.
they want power over others or
They want
power
power
over
too,
other. They
right?
want power to be themselves, to do what
Mm-hmm.
they want to do when it's not hurting anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
They want honestly for like you and me, like the power to be queer and trans without somebody like putting a target on us,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
just want to be gay and do crimes. Like, actually, I don't want to do
Seriously,
crimes.
I
I
want to
don't
be
want the
crime and
law
be
to.
gay.
I don't want the law to exist for their.
Yeah.
There would be no crimes if there were simply no law. Law is the progenitor of all crime, and don't let anyone ever tell you differently, internet.
I tell everyone crime is a social construct.
Yep.
It's not a real thing. It's a
If you
made
want to
up
reduce
thing.
crime, repeal every law.
It's true. I agree with that. Yep. But obviously we gotta have a plan in place. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of prefiguration and building dual power, which is
Mm-hmm.
what the Tulsa community orgs are all about, is building dual power and prefiguration of a horizontal system
Mm-hmm.
to take the place of our hierarchical system where everyone has power
Mm-hmm.
equally, everyone has a say to represent themselves because we are the best person to represent ourselves, not some random asshole who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth, you
Right.
know?
Or rather, as I put it, a system in place where our inherently unequal powers can be navigated cooperatively to build each other up.
Mhm.
Because, like,
Yeah.
we have different powers by virtue of our environment, by virtue of our physical ability, by
Yeah.
virtue of our
Mhm.
personal and collective histories. Like, I have the power to speak Spanish. That's not something most of America has. That, but you know what? A good way to get through that is to talk to one another, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It.
It's I you know anyway, with the way that with online access, anyone can learn
Mm-hmm.
another language. And I hear like my rich cousin saying like, oh, Riley is so smart, she already speaks two languages. I'm like, yeah, so does little Maria, and literally like every child of an immigrant in this entire country, like all speak multiple languages, and they didn't have a private tutor, so like,
Yeah, if you
good
want,
for
if
you.
you, si te quieres hablar lenguajes, fucking just do it. Like, you can go
Yeah.
online, actually, right? It's great, the
Yeah.
democratization of knowledge, right?
Hmm.
And but that just shows, like, that's one key institution that allows us to cooperatively compound our abilities. And if we could do that with everything, and we can, right?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
greatest lie ever told is that the way the world is the way the world must be, right?
Oh yeah, appeal to tradition is a deeply honestly, I think that it would never change if we didn't have autistic people, because we are the only ones that are like, well, I know it's been done that way forever, but it doesn't make any sense. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And then when they can't explain it, we're like, well, then we're not going to do it that way. And
I,
I think if none of us were there to point those things out, that the appeal to tradition is nonsense, we would just be,
Yeah.
doing the exact same things.
Yeah, but as it's said, the traditions of dead men weigh on like a what in the minds of the living, like a ghost in the minds of the living, or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's still with with this fucking uh constitution written by
Some white
like
slave owning
some
people.
weird slave owners like hundreds of years ago.
Like, why? How does that apply in any way, shape, or
Yeah,
form to my? It didn't even
why should
apply
I
to people's
adhere to
lives
that?
back
It's
then.
nonsense.
Like
Like, are we gonna adhere to like the hieroglyphs that we find from thousands of years ago?
the
Well,
ancient
some people actually
scrolls,
do,
right?
still, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's to say, like, the Constitution was unreasonable even back then. It did not apply to anyone except for the kind of people the founding fathers saw themselves in, right? Like it wasn't even like reasonable back then. It was literally a counter revolution against
Yes.
against the against the Articles of Confederation, right? And that's
Mhm.
not to say that America was a good idea in the first place, but then there was a relatively libertarian revolt against the British monarchy, and then
Yeah.
after that, they're like, but we can't tax people and we can't control them as much, so
Yeah.
we're gonna overthrow our own government
Yep.
so we can have
It
more
was kind of
power.
like I get the desire to like we want to get away from the monarchy. We want to get away from oversight of the church.
Good.
But then of course like they decided to like move to a place where people were already living, and you can't even claim squatters' rights because there were people already fucking living here. Um, and then at some point they just recreated what they claimed they were trying to escape.
I mean, we're now doing what, like theocratic neo feudalism.
Yeah.
We did
Yeah,
it
we are
again.
very, very quickly sliding face first into ethno-nationalist and um uh theocratic fascism,
Yep.
and like it's taking the gloves off at this point. They're saying the quiet part out loud.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even trying to hide it.
It goes to show if you if you want to change everything, you have to actually commit to changing everything, and
Yeah.
and that doesn't just mean the large mega system. David Graver points out that the world we are collectively, in many ways, voluntarily creating our own hell. We can choose to stop doing. The world is not amorphous systems. It is not gods floating in the air laying down the laws of physics. It is not Zeus from on high. It is
Yeah.
us, day in, day out, recreating the same patterns because of incentives that exist before us. We
Well,
can
yeah,
choose. We can
part of
change that.
part of that is real material conditions that
Mm-hmm.
we're under that make it very difficult for us to which we've this entire interview we've been talking about ways that the system deliberately tries to prevent us from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But you've heard of the thing about with the elephant and like the tiny little chain where if you like have this chain around an elephant's leg from birth, that they will for the rest of their life believe that they're unable to escape it, even though when they're big they could very easily break it. And I don't even know if that's true, but it's a good analogy for
Mm-hmm.
for the mentality that we have. I think it was Ursula Le Guin that said something to the effect of that we live under this system that seems unbreakable, to paraphrase, unbreakable, but that monarchy seemed
Mm-hmm.
unbreakable as well,
Yeah.
insurmountable, and
We.
and
Mhm.
we managed to overturn that.
Right. I mean, capitalism pervades us. It seems inescapable, but then again, so was divine right of kings, right?
Yes, that is that's closer to the
Yeah.
verbatim
I,
quote.
I, I
Yeah,
still butchered it, but like, uh,
that's why I like the phrase "she was like," instead of saying "she said." She was like, this gets the gist.
yeah. But no, I think that uh, everything we talked about here points to there are real consequences to not coming together as people that we live and experience day in day out. And, an infinite amount of interviews would end up saying the same thing, that we all
Absolutely.
intuitively are experiencing our own collective suffering, but we have to bear it individually, and it's
Yeah.
unreasonable. It's it's
Hmm.
it's completely unreasonable, and
A
and
lot of people are aware of it and don't really know what to
yeah,
do with it. And that,
exactly.
kind of goes to something, that I say a lot as being a theory nerd myself. Um, I say that, you don't have to read theory to look around and realize that this is fucked up, that this isn't working for us, that this is destroying us. But, reading theory and having those conversations with each other will tell us better how
Hmm.
to move forward, how to make the changes,
Hmm.
how to collectively organize and express our collective power.
And to that point, uh, to cap off this interview on talking about community, alienation, the world, and how what we can do to get unfucked. What would you? I know I didn't put this in the sheet, but I figured this is a good question to ask you. You're far more knowledgeable than I am. How can people who are at home right now, how can they start trying to get motivated in their personal community?
Um, it sounds so trite, but you just have to do it. Email me or DM me, Anarchitect 918 on, or just, they can DM you and you can send them to me, or Anarch. We absolutely 100% will send you our charters. Just get it started. Create orgs. We can give you the foundation. Just just fucking do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then get the ball rolling. Because honestly, if we can do it here in the middle of the Bible Belt, fucking Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
There's nowhere. I'm telling you, places in like West Virginia, they are going to be very easily radicalized.
Yeah.
You just
They
have to do it.
already
Not
hate
be
the
defeated
government.
about it. Not
Like,
be defeated. And
right. Mm-hmm.
understand that yeah, we may not be able to rest under the shade of the trees that we plant today, but we have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to. We have no other choice.
If not for each other, then for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
not for each other, then for ourselves. All right. Well,
Hmm.
then just to end this out, to everyone at home, if you happen to be in Tulsa or in Oklahoma, check out Cooperation Tulsa. Check out Scissortail Anarchist Organization. Uh, Check out your local scene if you're in Oklahoma City. There's things happening there. Literally look up your city mutual aid and on Google, and you will
Yep.
find something, because wherever there are people, there are those whose hearts are beating and they're actively willing to spill that blood to protect each other.
Yep.
We are not alone. We have just forgotten what it means, what those words actually mean. You know. All right. Well, thank you so much, and uh,
I think,
fuck
uh-oh,
the
I
state of
think internet
Israel,
went down.
fuck Azerbaijan, and I'll see you. uh,
Quetza, are you there?
yes, I am. Hello,
Hello.
hello.
I
I
now
can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it video went out and audio went out, and I didn't hear anything past you saying to search for the people in your area doing mutual aid.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I guess I'll to reiterate that wherever there are people around, there are hearts that are beating. You know, you can find them. We can find each other. We are not alone. We have just forgotten what it means. And fuck every genocidal state, and they all are.
Hmm.
Specifically, right now, fuck Azerbaijan for what they did to Arsak. Fuck Israel for what it's doing to Palestine. Fuck the United States for everything, always. Uh, and Be gay, do crimes. All right.
Or be crime, do gay.
Hey! All right, see you around. And